Welcome to Catholic Champion. I'm your host, John Yep, co-host Michael Hichborn. We have a full show today. We were with President Trump just 2 days ago on a religious liberty hearing. You're going to want to hear what was talked about and the announcement we have at the end of the video. Stay tuned. America runs on Dunkin' Donuts. That's the phrase on this little carton. We all have seen that a million times. Yes, I drink Dunkin' Donuts coffee at times. Made me think when I was ordering coffee, America runs on Dunkin'. What does the Catholic run on? Well, Saint Carlo Acutis and also Frassati, his counterpart, were both canonized this past Sunday by Pope Leo. Incredible event for Catholicism in general. Amazing how much the secular media also picked up on it. We were, as evidenced by their press coverage, we were interviewed like 4 or 5 times by secular press, Newsmax mainly. But Acutis had a phrase regarding what Catholics run on, okay? He said something to the effect of, you sit in the sun and you get suntan. You sit in front of the Eucharist, you become a saint. So much truth to that. So a Catholic runs on his devotion to the Holy Eucharist. Is that a fair kind of comparison between the Dunkin' Donuts coffee, Michael Hichborn, and what a Catholic runs on, or is that a thumbs down?
Well, I mean, it's true that the Catholic Church is completely and totally energized by the Holy Eucharist. Everything about our faith is centered around it. So how can we not be run by the grace that comes from the Holy Eucharist?
Absolutely. That's the source and summit of the apostolic life or the Christian life of the church, as was it Vatican II said that. So it's what we need to be hearing. But anyway, so great to have those two saints. They're up there interceding for us. Frassati, by the way, I don't know how much you study up on these saints before we get into the main topic, but Frassati was almost under talked about from the aspect of his involvement with political action. Have you picked up on that at all?
Oh yeah, no, he was extremely active against the fascists and the socialists. He was a very, very clear anti-socialist, and even got into a bit of a tussle with some socialist activists as he was standing against them and praying.
He was arrested, actually. So. Yeah. At least on one occasion, okay? So, again, we're going to be looking at back here, Catholics for Catholics, because that's like just really a consummate individual, someone almost like an example, truly, for us as an activist organization involved in political, cultural arenas, trying to make America Catholic, is a figure of how to bring your faith into the public square, okay? Recognizing socialism for what it was. He was very motivated, inspired by Pope Leo the 13th documents on Rerum Novarum, social justice, true social justice, right? And he, his father ran La Stampa, one of the major Italian newspapers to this day. So they were very much involved, and he found a way to bring his faith there, live it out, and still get to heaven, which is the most important thing. So great example for Catholics. And if you're a volunteer or supporter of Catholics for Catholics, we put him out there as someone to look up to. But the story that I got to tell you about. So I was in Michael Hichborn's neck of the woods about a couple days ago. Hey, you live out, you literally live in the woods. Okay. So I wasn't in the woods, but I was in the area. Okay. I was in Washington, D.C.
The swamp. I'm in the woods.
Yeah,
D.C. is in the swamp.
Yeah. The swamp. And funny enough, it literally was a swamp, right? Historically too, right?
Yep.
So it's now figuratively a swamp in a different way, right? But even though the water's been drained. And Rome actually was a swamp too, and people don't know that as well. Rome area was also a swampy area. That's why the popes actually used to go out of Rome during the summer. It wasn't just like get out of the heat. It was also to escape the plagues that would ravage Rome during that time. But anyway, so all right. So I was in Michael's area. Where was it doing? I.e. Washington, D.C. Okay. We had been invited to, and Michael, if you're freezing up, let me know. I'll just keep talking, but you're coming out pretty good so far here on my end. So
I'm good.
We were invited by the White House, some members of the White House Office of Faith. This is the office that President Trump had reestablished after taking office in January. And their efforts, I mean, as the name denotes, is to promote the exercise of faith and religion in the public square, as our founders envisioned. Okay. So part of their action items was to have a religious liberty commission, okay, established to advise the president. Now, the executive order was on May 1st, which is also the National Day of Prayer, that it was established, naming an executive commission or committee, rather, that would advise the president. So some members were named. I think it's like a 15-panel team, okay? Two bishops that you're going to recognize, Cardinal Dolan and Bishop Robert Barron, are on the panel. And it's also run by, people don't know this, by Mary Margaret Bush, okay? She's also a very strong Catholic. I actually got to meet her husband recently. And so it's infiltrated by Catholics, and in a good sense. So they had their, this was their second hearing that they had. I was invited to participate in the hearing, and there's also a special announcement at the end of this video, so you got to watch till the end, because CforC has some big news regarding us in the White House and this commission, okay, which we'll announce at the end. But let's just talk. I want to get into the whole subject matter. It's a very, very important. It's a crucial theme that we have for this. I mean, Michael, do you have any initial thoughts when you heard that there was this commission happening, or the second hearing?
To be honest, I wasn't really paying a whole lot of attention to that side of things, and so I hadn't heard of it until you pointed it out to me earlier.
Yeah, I mean, that's also the thing too. I mean, a lot of us too, and I think it's it
really went under the radar.
Yeah, it's under the radar.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, that's half the novelty, and also the importance of this, because the things that they're talking about have been under the radar. We're going to get into the specifics. So the Religious Liberty Commission is having several hearings. I don't know, like they're going to have, and they're going to cover different themes. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I forget what the first one was, but the second hearing that they had, which I was at, covered specifically the threat of religious persecution in our school system. Okay. So they had witnesses who were talking about different instances where they have been threatened, okay, for their faith. Okay. So awesome topic. I think the next topic they're going to cover is religious persecution, discrimination in the military. Okay. So that's coming later. But for now, it was the Department of Education, which is such a hot topic. Okay. So let's just get, I want to get some, President Trump was there. Okay. He came at the end, and he also was there for the announcement, which we'll get to at the end of the video. But let's get a clip right now of President Trump there at that event.
Thank you to all of the faith leaders, pastors, and patriots who have come to the Museum of the Bible for this historic meeting of the Presidential Commission on Religious Liberty. Under the Trump administration, we're defending our rights and restoring our identity as a nation under God. We will protect the Judeo-Christian principles of our founding. I am delighted to announce that just moments ago, I have personally delivered the Trump Family Bible given to me by my mother. It was used in both my inaugurations and will now be displayed right in the heart of our nation's capital. And that's an honor. For most of our country's history, the Bible was found in every classroom in the nation. Yet in many schools today, students are instead indoctrinated with anti-religious propaganda, and some are even punished for their religious beliefs. I'm pleased to announce this morning that the Department of Education will soon issue new guidance protecting the right to prayer in our public schools. And I created the first ever Department of Justice task force to eradicate anti-Christian bias. America has always been a nation that believes in the power of prayer, and we will never apologize for our faith, ever. Together we will make our country greater, stronger, more united, and more faithful than ever before. Thank you, God bless you, and God bless America. Thank you very much.
Elections matter, everybody. Okay?
Yep.
Elections matter. Can you compare that? Okay, Trump is not Catholic. He's not even really Christian, nominally Christian or Christian affiliated or Christian friendly. Okay? We had a Catholic president, okay, just a year ago. who was, remember, he was allowed to receive communion on a weekly basis by the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. They saw no problem with it. Nobody sanctioned him. Nobody really spoke up aside from like Strickland, Bishop Strickland, and he was nixed. Okay. Yeah. That was a year ago. Do you think, and what happened under the Biden administration or the Otto Penn administration?
Right.
You know, did you see that, by the way, with Trump in the White House? He had, he's actually taking down the picture of President Biden. They got Barack Obama, and then they have Trump, but in the middle, he's putting a picture of the Otto Pen. It's true, man. And so,
oh my gosh.
We laugh. It's scary. And okay, why is it scary? Because of what happened. And we're going to hear these testimonies. So Trump goes from the White House over to the Museum of the Bible. Okay. You know, kudos for our Protestant brethren or fellow Americans that started this museum in the first place. Okay. We should have done it as Catholics. Mm-hmm. We should have. Well, they're on it. They got it. So great. They have it there in museum. Awesome. So they're missing a few books probably there, right? I would assume that they're covering.
It would seem so.
We should just have like a side museum that kind of like the complement for the missing books of the Bible nearby. But
right.
Okay. So he goes over to them. Note, I brought this up on an interview. He didn't go to the Museum of the Quran.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh. He went to the Museum of the Christian Bible. Okay. Yeah. That's significant. I don't think there is a Museum of the Quran.
I was going to say, I don't think there is one, but
point is, it's a Christian nation. It's not, Islam is not, you know, it's, they're the newbies on the street and they're creating a ruckus. Okay. Yeah. So he goes to the Museum of the Bible. Okay. He makes a point there out of his schedule. He's the busiest person in the entire world, pretty much one of the most. Okay. Aside from my wife, okay, it was also very busy keeping our family going. But so Trump's there. He has this hearing, and they bring testimony. Let's get into those testimonies, okay? Any testimony that's struck you right off the bat, Michael, about that really kind of hit home before I bring some up myself that you remember off the top of your head?
You know, the testimonies were all very similar in one respect, and that was that the external expression of our Christian faith was being suppressed by the education system. Now, before you get into the testimonies, if you indulge me for a moment, I want to read to you something. And I want to read it because this really strikes to the heart of exactly what we're talking about, the education system. And what's more, this actually shows the history of the problem. So this comes from a comedian back in the 1940s, 1950s named Red Skelton. Have you ever heard of him?
No.
Okay. Red Skelton was a comedian, but he was a conservative, very, very committed Christian. And he did this very interesting. This is from 1969. Okay. This is from the Red Skelton Hour. And what he did is he simply recited the Pledge of Allegiance as he was taught it when he was a young child in school. This is what he said. Again, this is very short. He said, "When I was a small boy in Vincennes, Indiana, I heard, I think, one of the most outstanding speeches I ever heard in my life. I think it compares with the Sermon on the Mount, Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, and Socrates' speech to the students. We had just finished reciting the Pledge of Allegiance, and he, Mr. Laswell, the principal of Vincennes High School, called us all together. And he said, 'Boys and girls, I've been listening to you recite the Pledge of Allegiance all semester, and it seems that it has become monotonous to you. Or could it be you do not understand the meaning of each word? If I may, I would like to recite the pledge and give you a definition for each word.' And then he went on to recite the Pledge of Allegiance, defining the words. He said, 'I, me, an individual, a committee of one, pledge, dedicate all of my worldly good to give without self-pity. Allegiance, my love and my devotion. To the flag, our standard, Old Glory, a symbol of courage, and wherever she waves, there is respect, because your loyalty has given her dignity that shouts, freedom is everybody's job. To the united, that means we all come together, states, individual communities that have united into 48 great states, 48 individual communities with pride and dignity and purpose, all divided by imaginary boundaries, yet united to a common cause. And that's love of country, of America. And to the republic, a sovereign state in which the power is invested into the representatives chosen by the people to govern. And the government is the people, and it's from the people to the leaders, not to the leaders to the people, for which it stands. One nation, meaning so blessed by God, indivisible, incapable of being divided, with liberty, which is freedom, the right of power for one to live his own life without fears, threats, or any sort of retaliation, and justice, the principle and qualities of dealing fairly with others, for all. For all. That means, boys and girls, it's as much your country as it is mine. Now let me hear you recite the Pledge of Allegiance. And so they recite the Pledge of Allegiance, and he adds this at the end. Since I was a small boy, 2 states have been added to our country, and 2 words have been added to the Pledge of Allegiance. Under God. Wouldn't it be a pity if someone said that's a prayer and that had to be eliminated from our schools too? So what this gets to is really the essence of what this conference was all about. Because the Pledge of Allegiance, which still says under God, has now been transitioned to this idea that you can't have any reflection, any kind of allusion to prayer, to God, to Christ. One of the students that that was in that particular conference giving testimony said that his valedictorian speech was edited to remove the name of Christ.
Justin Aguilar.
Yes.
We could show that clip, actually, pull that up. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
He was one of the best speakers, by the way. Like, this kid he was a stud. He said, basic summary is a school administrator struck through, he's from North Carolina. A school administrator struck through a number of instances of the word God and Jesus Christ in Justin's valedictorian speech, despite the language being protected by the U.S. Constitution. Justin respectfully and successfully appealed to deliver the speech unchanged. Let's play that clip if we can. He's pulling it up now, but okay. I think even Trump or the Lieutenant Dan Patrick was the moderator of the commission, just said right after he spoke, like, anyone have any doubt that this guy's a valedictorian? I mean, he was sincere. He was strong. It was the second testimony that was given. While we're pulling it up, and just maybe another one that was really caught my attention. You have Shay Encinas. She's a former student at La Costa Heights Elementary School in California. Shay was targeted and harassed by school administration classmates after objecting to read a book glorifying transgenderism to a kindergarten student. So targeted and harassed by her school. Here's another one. Lydia Booth. Lydia was prohibited from wearing a Jesus Loves Me face mask during the pandemic, despite nothing in the dress code banning religious clothing. Lydia's family
success. Before you go on, I want to point out a really bizarre irony about her story.
Yeah, go.
At a time when they were just totally fearful of the dangers of this virus, they found the words on her mask more dangerous than the alleged virus itself and had her remove the mask. They had her take it off. So at a time when they were putting safety above all else, and they had to make sure that nobody was going to catch this horrible, horrible disease, they had her take her mask off because her words were more dangerous than the virus. What an irony.
Completely. The irony also is if you had said, Allah loves me.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Which I don't even know, by the way, do they believe that?
No.
I mean, Islam means submission. So you have to like submission and crush the person. Not much love going on there. Right.
Right.
So, but correct me if I'm wrong, please, scholars of that sect. Okay. Okay. We're going to play that Justin Aguilar clip now. Let's listen to this guy.
Hello, everyone. Hello. Good morning. My name is Justin Aguilar. I'm a public school graduate, and I recently graduated as valedictorian of my high school class. I never imagined that standing for my faith in Christ would lead me here, but I thank God that it has. I'm not here to criticize, but to testify, to share my experience in hopes that it encourages you, empowers educators, and builds courage in students to share their faith. Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And I truly believe that. And it's in our being. Our Pledge of Allegiance says that we are one nation under God. When preparing my high school valedictorian speech, I included a few sentences to express my gratitude to God and his son, Jesus, because he gave me the ability to succeed in my education. And he has carried me through many serious medical hardships. But when I submitted my speech, it was censored. Jesus Christ was crossed out completely. They didn't want his name to be on my paper. They just simply crossed his name out. It broke my heart. These weren't just lines on a paper or words that were crossed out, but Jesus is part of who I am. I was not allowed to mention the name of my friend, the person who means so much to me. This was especially hard because I had strong relationships with the teachers and the administrators. So when I was asked to remove Jesus, it tore my heart. I asked the person, why are they doing this? They said that if I didn't change the speech, they wouldn't allow me to give it. They told me that I couldn't talk about Jesus due to separation of church and state. They also told me that they had another student from a previous year who had similar situation, and that student was also censored. So even though my speech was censored on paper, it didn't sit right with me. In my heart, I wanted to give glory to God no matter what, but I also wanted to respect my school administrators and authorities. I wanted to do what was right. I confirmed with the Liberty Council that I wasn't somehow mistaken and that the First Amendment allowed me to give credit to God at my graduation. Afterwards, respectfully, I made the decision to move forward, trusting God. I resubmitted my speech with everything I wanted to say.
So, okay, we're going to cut it there. You can, again, the full testimony, he goes on to say basically like he was shaking in the moment, like when he actually went up there to deliver his speech, and unedited. And he gives a speech, and what happens?
Standing ovation.
Boom.
Yep.
Says so much.
Yep.
Says so much. So people like this is the kind of the feel of the room that, you know, I was probably have 200 people there in the audience, very relatively intimate gathering with President Trump, and then that full panel that you saw. So these are some of the testimonies that were there. Also, some other ones I want to briefly mention. You have Valerie Cleveringa, former student at Westward Elementary School in Michigan. She was prohibited from singing "That's Who I Praise" by popular Christian artist Brandon Lake in the school talent show. After public outcry, the school reversed course and allowed Valerie to perform the song. This girl, I mean, even if we can show her for like 10 seconds, she came right after Justin. The girl's like maybe 7 years old.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cute.
Yeah, she's cute and brave. Okay. Yep. You got Hannah Allen and a group of classmates decided to pray during lunch for a former classmate recently in a car accident. The prayer principal told the group, y'all don't do that again, and said they can only pray on the stage. Okay, here we got Valerie. Let's listen to our little Valerie girl here.
What he loves to sing about. The teachers stated they would have to go through my song, but it should be okay because it doesn't go into detail like my brother's song choice. The same night, my parents had a phone call with the principal. They wanted to hear from her why she wanted my brother to change his song and what the actual issue was. The principal stated the song was too Christian and they were worried about what another student would think. The principal also started picking out words in my brother's song, like the word slave. She stated they had an issue with that word, but the song says no longer slave, referring to Moses in the promised land in the Bible. She finally agreed to let my brother try out with the song, but said he would have to change it if he had made it into the talent show. My parents disagreed because there's nothing bad about the lyrics, and he would only have a couple days to learn a different song. Mind you, this was my brother's first talent show. He was so excited and even emotional when practicing. My parents mentioned to her my song Up and Up, also mentioned God. She was unaware and said they would have to revise my song as well. The next day at school, the same teacher that contacted my mom found me and told me that there were issues with our songs because not everyone believes in God. My brothers did it that the same day. The same teacher told him.
The best part is when she says the school was basically standing their ground until they got a note from, like, I think it was the Liberty Council.
Mm-hmm.
And then they changed their tune. So the audience erupted in laughter. So
Yeah.
Again, when you take us to the court system, thanks be to God, at least we still have some form of a just court system in some degree. You know, they back down as they should. Okay, you got also Lana Roman. Lana and her other parents are fighting back against Montgomery County Board of Education for forcing pre-K and elementary age children to read controversial books promoting transgender and sexually focused content. On June 27, 25, the SCOTUS Supreme Court ruled 6-3 that parents have the right to opt their children out of books that push one-sided views on gender identity and sexuality that violates religious beliefs.
Can I just say how disgusting it is that ruling was 6-3?
Yeah, good point. I know we're all jumping up and down that 6-3. Yay. But you're right. Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, the idea that anybody would say that children, the elementary children, need to be force-fed anything with regard to the rainbow agenda or even just human sexuality at all is completely and totally vile. And you know, as a parent, obviously it's a violation of parental rights, but it's also child abuse to try and instill in a child any thoughts with regard to human sexuality during their latency period. And you have to understand something about childhood development. There is a latency period. It's called sexual latency. And what it does, children have no concept of human sexuality prior to puberty. And during that period, if you start introducing ideas of sexuality, you cause arrested development. You can literally break their psyche and force them to remain at a lower intellectual level than had they been introduced to human sexuality during the time of puberty, when it was naturally open for the brain and the mind to accept the ideas and to understand it. So what they're doing is child abuse, and they're creating an entire system, an entire generation of people that will become adults that don't mature properly, and they will have a broken mentality. I mean, this is why we're going to have a lot of violence and a lot of crime coming in the next generations, and why we're seeing it now.
That's an awesome insight. So they're basically their approach before they're ready to handle it. So it already warps their vision of human sexuality. And then let's throw another angle. They get to puberty. They're teenagers. They're hit with the sexuality on the internet and the immediacy of, for example, pornography or whatever, and then just further creates a disaster in their young psyches. It's horrible.
Yep.
We're creating monsters. So it's and again, you think, well, thank God that moms and parents can have that ability to stop that. Well, on the Biden administration, no. Next testimony, Jennifer Meade. mother of a child who was secretly transitioned. Dad and Jennifer Mead sued the Rockford Public School District. Note that it's public school. Again, maybe there's something there. Maybe private schools and homeschooling is the way to go. Okay, Dad and Jennifer Mead sued the Rockford Public School District in Michigan after district employees began treating the couple's middle-aged daughter as a boy with their knowledge or without their knowledge. You guessed it, without their knowledge or consent. So they began treating this kid without parents' knowledge. Insanity. Through one or two more here. You have Maggie. Okay, Maggie was silenced with no contact orders from her university in Illinois, Southern Illinois University, after students complained that her speech, including social media posts, her private life, messages to students, and class discussions on an array of topics were considered, quote, harmful. Maggie sued, and the university officials revised policies and student handbooks to ensure students with varying ideological and religious views are welcome. All are welcome on campus. Anyway, it goes on. I mean, these testimonies are something else, right?
All are welcome, except for those who want to express any kind of love or, appreciation for their faith or for Christ or whomever. If you want to profess your Christian faith, you're not really all that welcome. In fact, you're not allowed to express that.
No, you're not. And I think if there's two things out of the 17 testimonies, two common denominators or similarities between all these testimonies. There's one of two things. Mm-hmm. Either it's a kind of a transgenderism issue, okay?
Yep.
So that or it's a testimony of Christians trying to bring their faith into the public square.
Right.
Interesting.
It's interesting during the valedictorian testimony, what came to mind was that Christ died on a cross, and while he was dying on a cross, it was Pontius Pilate who put his name, Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews, on a piece of paper on that cross. And now these school administrators are taking his name and putting it on a cross. They're crossing it out. So, you start to think about how history repeats itself in a certain respect. They are continuing to place our Lord on the cross, crossing out his name.
Absolutely. It's a great analogy too. And we see that. And it's how ironic too, that if this religion is targeted probably more than I would say it, or Christianity are targeted more than anybody else, right? In light of the 1892 Supreme Court decision, which we should do a whole show just on that Supreme Court case sometime, that declared that this is a Christian nation. Okay. So the Supreme Court has declared this a Christian nation. And yet these instances, which I think also to understand this hearing, it took place under the auspice of the Department of Justice. That's why Pam Bondi was there, the Attorney General. Okay. So Trump has made it a point of his administration to make sure with the power of the Justice Department that we have the freedom of religion. We're going to talk about that, what that means and the errors of that for the American people. So let's go now. Okay. So that was the what. Okay. That's what happened. Okay. Now let's talk about a very important theme, because you have really the root causes of this. What are the root causes? Why is this happening? Yes, we said the Supreme Court gave us that freedom as a Christian nation. Yes, we have this in America. So how do we get to this point 250 years into our country? This is not the founders' intention. They did not intend for kids to be transitioned without their parents' knowledge. They did not intend for someone who had Jesus loves me on their face mask to be told to take it off, right? No way, Jose. So why? Let's get into the why. Michael, you have, rightly so, your issues. You said it's your second least favorite topic to talk about after the whole Middle East situation, right?
Yes.
By the way, commercial on that Middle East situation. Stay tuned, keep praying, because Benjamin Netanyahu is invading Gaza. He released a statement ultimatum yesterday. Says, get out of Gaza City. This is your last chance. Can't imagine it. we got to be praying. Pope Leo called Father Romanelli a couple days ago on the phone to see how he's doing. It is unjust. And in the meantime, Netanyahu has the audacity to go and bomb Qatar. Okay. Trump is very angry. He said, I wasn't even notified by this. We're trying to work. We're trying to create peace. And you go ahead and bomb them.
Yeah.
You know, I believe as others do that he's just creating these wars to stay in power. Okay.
Yep.
Anyway, I'm going to talk more about that because Michael, it's not your favorite topic, but we'll talk about it next week. Okay. So, but pray for these people. Okay. Pray for the people of God. The situation is real. Genocide's happening. It's sick what's going on. Yes, Hamas is bad. We get it. There are other ways to take care of them, not eradicating 2 million people. Okay. Sick. Okay. Got that out of the way, but religious freedom. Talk about this, Michael. What are your beefs? What do you see? What are your insights? They're good beefs.
Okay. So to start off, a lot of people think of religious freedom as basically the freedom that a Christian has to practice his faith in public square, which is it's a valid interpretation, but that's not how it's applied. And there's a double-edged sword here that a lot of people aren't taking into consideration, that if you're talking about religious liberty, meaning a religious liberty for all, anybody who professes a belief or a faith in any particular religious identity, and they have the freedom to pursue that and to live that and to profess that, now you're talking about a multicultural situation. And the whole idea of the melting pot, this, we're all these different cultures and we're all these different belief systems, and we all come together in the United States to live under a single set of laws. Well, what happens when you have one particular culture or one particular religion that believes one thing, and it's not only underrepresented by the law, but in conflict with the law? And we are facing this very situation when it comes to places like Dearborn, Michigan, where Sharia law is now being actively debated as to whether it's going to be a part of commonplace law or common law within that particular district. So you have a problem where a religious minority, which would be Christians or Jews or any others that are not part of the Muslim faith in Dearborn, Michigan, would be suppressed or oppressed. Okay. And then forced to pay tribute to, to the Muslim rulers in that area under Sharia law. So the problem with multiculturalism, the problem with multi-religiosity under the same set of laws is that necessarily where their ideologies differ, one is going to be oppressed. Has to be. So when you have, say, a religion that says, well, we have to profess a support and an endorsement and welcome for the LGBTQ community, or women necessarily, by their right as women, must be allowed to obtain an abortion. And this is our religious right. So now you're going to have to create either exceptions to the law, or you're going to have to allow a permissive law that automatically suppresses other people. So this is the problem. But even more to the point, as Catholics, we have to understand that the idea of religious liberty as a carte blanche ideology, religious freedom for all, anyone can practice whatever faith they want. They have that right. In fact, Cardinal Dolan, in one of his statements, called this a God-given right.
Should we play that clip now from Dolan?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead and play the clip, because I'll respond to that in just a moment.
As he's pulling it up again, Cardinal, here it is.
Of surveys on this distinguished commission. Thanks be to God, we have a chief executive who takes religious freedom seriously and realistically recognizes that it's under threat today. Now, I've been thinking, my enthusiasm for serving on this commission really doesn't come, you might think it would, but it really doesn't come from my role as pastor of the Catholic flock of New York, or from my own Catholic faith, however priceless both of those are to me. It comes because I'm a committed American citizen who strives to practice the biblical virtue of patriotism, who rejoices in the wisdom of our founders, that rights come not from governments, but from God, that the job of government is to protect our freedom, not to give them or take them away. As one who dabbles in American history, I realize that our finest, our most noble moments as a people have been inspired by our faith, our values, our moral fiber, and that our dreariest and scariest episodes come when that freedom of religion is snickered at, considered oppressive, or chipped away. Then we're in peril. To protect and to foster our first and most cherished freedom is thus my duty, my joy, and my honor, not just as a man of faith, not just as an ordained minister.
All right, we'll
but
cut it
as
there.
a
So
grateful
Yeah.
American
because the audio is kind of bad anyways on that, so apologies for that. But go ahead and respond to that. What he said.
Okay, so and I have to get the year right. Let me get the year right. The year is 1864. Pope Pius IX put together what he called the Syllabus of Errors, and they were a list of liberal ideologies that were being propagated around that particular time that were grave errors. And what he did is he put forth their ideology. He said, this is what they believe. And these propositions that they believe are condemned. So when I read to you a statement from the Syllabus of Errors, it is a condemned proposition. So for instance, one of them is number 15. And the proposition is, every man is free to embrace and profess that religion which, guided by the light of reason, he shall consider true. This is a condemned proposition. Again, every man is free to embrace and profess that religion, guided by the light of reason, he shall consider true, which means the opposite is actually true. That every man is not free to embrace and profess any religion guided by the light of reason that he considers true. So this is a very serious problem. This idea that everyone has the right to believe what they want to believe as a God-given right is false. But the syllabus goes on, and some of this stuff is what Cardinal Dolan was saying in his statement. Number 16, man may, in the observance of any religion whatever, find the way of eternal salvation and arrive at eternal salvation. That's false. The next one, good hope at least, is to be entertained of the eternal salvation of all who are not at all in the true church of Christ. So this is false. This actually strikes directly at what Hans Urs von Balthasar said in his book, Dare We Hope That All Men Are Saved? And this is also something that's very heavily promoted by Bishop Barron, that, hey, we can hope that there's salvation for all, especially for those who are not under the true church. Proposition 18, Protestantism is nothing more than another form of the same true Christian religion, in which form it is given to please God equally as in the Catholic Church. Now, one of the things that we hear consistently coming from this particular quarter of the faith is that, well, Catholicism is the privileged path. This is not so. It is the only path. And everything else that deviates from that is not on the path. Our Lord was very clear about this. Not one I, not the jot on one I or the tittle on a T will ever change from the law. And we have to be perfect as our Father in heaven is perfect. So it's important, it's incumbent upon us to evangelize, to promote the faith, and to draw people into the faith. So going to the secular side of things, the broader governance question, I want to jump down to point number 77. And it says, in the present day, it is no longer expedient that the Catholic religion should be held as the only religion of the state to the exclusion of all other forms of worship. This is a false statement. This is a condemned statement, which is to say that, to make it true, that in the present day, it is expedient that the Catholic religion should be held as the only religion of state to the exclusion of all other forms of worship. That's the true statement. Going to number 78. Hence, it has been wisely decided by law in some Catholic countries that persons coming to reside therein shall enjoy the public exercise of their own particular worship. Okay, which is to say that the converse is true, not this. This is a false statement. So the converse is, hence, it has wisely been decided by law in some Catholic countries that persons coming to reside herein shall not enjoy the public exercise of their own particular worship. And then lastly, I want to point this out. Number 79, it says, moreover, it is false that the civil liberty of every form of worship and the full power given to all of overtly and publicly manifesting any opinions whatsoever and thoughts conduce more easily to the corruption of morals and minds of the people and to propagate the pest of indifferentism. This is a false statement, so we have to read it in its true sense, which is to say that it is true that giving civil liberty to every form of worship actually makes it easier to corrupt the morals in the minds of the people and to propagate the pest of indifference. And we have seen that played out in spades through the ideology of religious freedom, religious liberty. So if we want to talk about religious liberty in the United States as a protection of Catholics to perform, to practice, and to propagate the faith, that's fine, because we Catholics absolutely do have that right given by God to do that. In fact, it's a mandate. But to say that this extends to Muslims, to Satanists, to pagans, to pantheists is not only not true, it's evil to say so.
So, okay. So again, it's kind of a summary. Michael was going through the syllabus of errors of Pope Pius the Ninth.
1864.
Wrote that in the middle of the American Civil War, and addressing some of the principles of like what he was seeing of religious indifferentism and religious plurality, and condemned some of these notions. So take this in an American context, okay?
Right.
So how should a Catholic patriot look at what we have in this country? Because, okay, yes, here's the deal. We do not have a right to practice. I think half of it's a problem of words, the terminology, right? We don't have an absolute right to practice whatever religion we want, right? We only have a right to do the good. Okay? That's what a right is. A right is a freedom given to you by God, by the natural law, with the responsibility, it's a capacity to do the good. That's what a right is. Okay? So it's a philosophical non sequitur to say you have a right to do an evil act, right? It just is. However, so what I think what the confusion is, and this is what I think is explained really well. This is a favorite book of mine. You got this book on your bookshelf?
I do.
By Athanasius Schneider, Credo. It's a compendium of the Catholic faith. Awesome. Kind of like your 2025 version of the Baltimore Catechism.
Yep.
And there's a great, I'm going to read you one of the questions. Okay. It's on, it's question number 746. What distinguishes, from Athanasius Schneider, Bishop, such a great stalwart and evangelist in the true sense, because he's speaking up on issues which some of our prelates aren't speaking up on. Okay. He was one of the member that challenged in a respectful way Pope Francis when he said that God wills the plurality of all religions.
Yeah.
When Pope Francis put his name, official name, and the backing of the church to the Abu Dhabi document, that joint statement between Muslims and Jews, that God wills the plurality of all religions. No, that's false. He doesn't will the plurality of all religions. Yeah. And Athanasius challenged that, right? Okay. And this is the question: what distinction must be made when speaking of religious freedom? Here's a great answer. Man enjoys a psychological freedom such that he's able to reject belief in God who reveals himself. However, man is bound by the most serious commandments to embrace divine revelation. Therefore, he has the moral duty to obey God, and so is deprived of moral freedom in this regard. Indeed, man has the physical ability to sin, but he has the gravest moral duty to abstain from sin. So I think the case is, at least we have, yes, you are, quote, free to practice whatever religion you want, in the sense of the psychological freedom.
Right. In the sense that God gave Adam and Eve the freedom to choose whether to eat the fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, or the freedom to choose to eat from the tree of life.
Right. So from the point of view of the Justice Department, like, because again, we're talking about a philosophical religious debate. How does it apply into jurisprudence? Right.
Yep. So I think that from a Catholic perspective, what we have to adopt is that when we talk about religious freedom, we're talking only about the Catholic Church, the Catholic faith, and practicing Catholics. And when we are pushing for the rights of Catholics to practice our faith, we put it in those terms only. We're not fighting for the rights of other religions. We're not fighting for the rights of false ideologies or anything along those lines. We're fighting simply for the right of Catholics to practice, to propagate the faith. So in terms of the context that we have here in the United States, that's the level at which we Catholics should be talking about it. Not with regard to other religions, not with regard to other faiths, just the Catholic faith. And if we stay within that realm, I think we're fine. But it's when you see these interfaith prayer circles and these interfaith activities where they're all getting together and they're saying, we're all united for religious freedom, that's where you run into problems.
Unless you're all united in the psychological freedom. That's what I mean. You have to nuance it. That's really what you have to explain, right? Because otherwise, again, America survived. Yet we were not the majority in this country when the documents were signed. I mean, you can make the case that there was crypto Catholicism in there in the documents of natural law, right? Which there are, right? The right to revolt, Robert Bellarmine, the right to, I mean, also the freedom of the individual too, which kind of counters what the predestination error of the Protestants. Anyway, there's crypto Catholicism embedded in there, but by and large, it was signed by Protestants, and it survived off the fumes of Christian, Catholic affiliated, whatever, for 250 years. But as Protestants in this country have waned in their hold and their moral fervor, right? Also Catholics for that matter, and then you combine that with the huge just influx of all-out pagans, right? Or followers of Islam or whatever, or just non-religious types that are in this country. We're facing a crucial point where it's like, if we don't kind of really get this straight and clear, as you're doing right now with what you're bringing up, the syllabus of errors, there's really no hope, right? So you have to, we got to be talking about this now. That's why now is really, when we say this is a Catholic moment in America, yes, there's an uptick on some demographics and Catholics in this country. That's a good thing. But the Catholic moment in America, it also means like it's make it or break it. Like either the Catholic faith takes a strong hold in this country for the purpose of helping the republic, or we are lost.
Well, and this is ultimately why the Satanic Temple, for instance, is pushing for abortion as a religious freedom initiative. They're saying that restricting abortion laws infringes upon their right because abortion is a satanic ritual, which is an ironic admission. But at the end of the day, if you're going to talk about religious freedom as a universal standard, then you have to allow for Satanists to perform ritualistic abortions. And I don't think any Catholic would ever side with that. So you have to put it in proper context, and you have to understand, look, a right that comes from God is a right that pertains only, as you pointed out, to the good. And we can never give rights to evil. Evil does not have any rights. And evil, as identified as a lack of the do good or a privation, would be either an omission of the truth or propagation of a falsehood. So a false religion that either hides the truth or perverts the truth does not have the same weight or the same rights to exist as the Catholic faith does. It just doesn't.
So the question for, if you're a Catholic attorney general, because again, this translates over into how is it legislated or how is it governed, okay, for a society. The battle is going to have to be, at what point is this the psychological freedom of the individual to do that, and what point is it their physical freedom to do this, right? Or because they don't have a moral duty, a Satanist does not have a moral freedom to conduct that ceremony at the Kansas State City Capitol as they did a few months ago.
That's right.
They have the psychological freedom. So at what point do you use the power of the state to stop that, right? That's the question. And that's what we need to address here as we make our voices heard in public square.
Yeah, and it's something that needs to be debated. And unfortunately, a lot of the bishops have capitulated their duty and said, oh, no, we're just going to have these interfaith prayer services and interfaith prayer this and interfaith prayer that. And then forget the fact that they're also fighting against Satanists who are trying to say, hey, we're just as equal in prayer as you guys. And so from a philosophical standpoint, you're standing on sandy ground by saying it's a universal application except for you. Well, where do you draw the line then?
And if daddy's not home, if daddy's not in control of the house, then mayhem takes over. And I mean, the reference basically with the role of the shepherds to govern the flock, because it was Catholic Senator Tim Kaine who just said a week and a half ago that rights, this is even worse. Okay.
Oh, I know.
Rights don't come from God. Rights come from the government. Okay. Thank God Bishop Barron nailed that right away. Came out and said, this is ridiculous. Thank you, Bishop, for speaking up there. And also President Trump. This is what's absurd about this. Okay. This is where like the whole story of Jesus Christ recognizing the centurion and the gospel as having more faith than the religion of the people of Israel.
The people of the day. Yeah.
The people of the day, the religion of it's like Christ saw more virtue outside his own faith than he did inside his faith and called this out.
Yep.
President Trump, in that sense, even said this like 2 days ago. He was setting better than the Catholic did. He said, what is Senator Kaine saying? Okay, this guy's crazy.
Yeah.
Trump gets it. So that's awesome. And that's we're blessed to have this president as opposed to the other option that they held up to us last November.
I agree.
Okay. And let's be kind of closing on this whole philosophical discussion and just kind of go to our final point. I want to say one of the takeaways too, that Attorney General Pam Bondi, she issued a memorandum the day after, and it was a memo upholding constitutional rights and parental authority in the American education system. That's huge. Okay. It was released September 9th, the morning after. And, brief summary is she notes in the memo that recent years have seen a disturbing trend in which government officials and public education authorities have ignored, dismissed, or even retaliated against concerned parents for daring to voice opposition to their children's curriculum. Notably, the prior administration engaged in such weaponization by targeting concerned parents at school board meetings with a threat tag reserved for potential terrorists. Under the leadership of Trump and AG Bondi, parents' First Amendment rights and their fundamental right to direct the moral, religious education of their children will be protected from unlawful attacks. Okay, and she's directed her agency, Department of Justice, to work with federal, state, and local partners to identify and respond to credible threats against parents or violations of their lawful rights. That's a Catholic Principle 101, which has been reaffirmed by a non-Catholic administration after a Catholic administration was targeting parents for that. Awesome. That's beauty.
Yeah.
It sounds like, I mean, you shake your head like, duh, it's so basic, but like, man, like this is what was going on. And
well, of course. Yeah. I mean, the fact of the matter is we had weirdos dressing up in women's clothing, revealing women's clothing, that had all sorts of augmentations, shall we say, to their body to make them appear as a sex that they were not, dancing around and prancing around in front of children and telling them about sexual debauchery. I mean, that kind of craziness being done in elementary schools when kids are supposed to be learning about colors and shapes and counting and how to read, just about the alphabet. And instead they're being indoctrinated and groomed with sexual perversions. That's, hey, I'm all for what Pam Bondi is putting forward and protecting us from protecting our kids from that kind of insanity.
It's the protection and also the empowerment, i.e. ESAs, school vouchers, putting the power in the hands of the families. Like Arizona is awesome. Again, it's like you could have around like $8,000 or so per kid you get from the state. Hey, here's the money. You go to whatever school system is going to help you out. You're in control. It's incredible, right? That's what we need. That's Catholic principle at work. Let's go to the end of this. Okay. Trump announces through his Scott Turner, he's a cabinet member who's in urban development. Trump was right behind when he announced the statement. Let's hear what this announcement is, and it has to do with prayer
to pray
for America,
for our country. Well, Mr. President, America's faith communities are responding with overwhelming enthusiasm, as you can see here today. Today, more than 70 major faith organizations and churches have joined together to participate in what we're calling America Prays. In fact, many of you are here today, including leaders from Pray.com, Hallow, the National Religious Broadcasters, the Faith and Freedom Coalition, Intercessors for America, and many, many others are here with us. And I want to take a moment. If you are here today and you have joined this faith movement, America Prays, please stand if you're here this morning. Please, if you're here, stand and let us see you. Amen. Amen. Thank you. Well, together, we have our simple proposition. Think about this. What if 1 million people prayed for our country every single week between now and next July 4th? More specifically, what if believers all across this great nation got together with 10 people, friends, family members, colleagues, work associates, 10 people each week to pray for our country and for our fellow citizens? Let that sink in. 1 million people every single week, 10 people getting together to pray for our country and for her citizens. Think about the miracles that would take place over the next year. Think about the transformation that you and I could witness in communities all across the land. Sons returning to their fathers, daughters returning to their mothers, families coming back together, health being restored, financial needs being met, mountains being moved. Think about it. If 1 million of us every week got together and prayed for this great country, how many know that God is well able to do it? Amen. Amen.
Cut it there. So
we're a nation that has always believed.
What you have is they made the announcement of a new campaign from the White House called America Prays. Okay. Trump was there and he has put the full force of his White House, his administration behind this initiative to bring prayer back to America as we prepare for the 250th anniversary foundation or celebration of this country. I mean, you just can't understate what was done there. It's, I mean, if you're the Lord Jesus, I can't only imagine what Christ is thinking. Yes, he knows that his children are viewing this in their own imperfect way because they're not all members of the Catholic faith. But by and large, to know that they are turning to him for guidance, for help, for inspiration, for gratitude, it's got to make Christ pleased. And in our big news is that Catholics for Catholics was asked by the White House staff personnel to basically put our name to this as one of the initial participating organizations. There are about 17 or so that were named there and asked Catholics for Catholics to join, which we readily did. And what we've done, we were out of the gate right away. We basically have created, we're going to pull this up on our website too, or on the screen. We created a Catholic version or complement to this. So we're with the White House. We want to bring prayer back to America, but we also understand that to pray as we are ought, as Christ taught us. There's the Catholic way is the way to do it. Okay. Because we have the sacraments, right? We have the ability to receive Christ in the Eucharist. And so we launched our campaign right away, same day that this was done. And I have to say, as we pull this up on the screen, it's really it's a grace. You know, we're not even 3 years old to be able to have grown this fast with all of your support, everything you're helping us to get. This is what you're doing, okay? You who are supporting us is enabling us to be there in Washington, D.C. with President Trump, to be there on the White House website page as a group that's there. We want to bring prayer back to America. Yes, we are activists by and large. We chase down ballots. We get involved. We oppose LGBT whatever stuff. We stand with priests. We speak up on issues that need to be heard. But at the end of the day, it is prayer. It's when we do our patriotic rosaries every week. And this is our way to bring this home to the American people as a support for the Republic. Comments on this, Michael?
You know what's missing from the list of organizations participating in this?
I know it.
The United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. Isn't that interesting? Catholics
You're right,
for Catholics
man.
is on the White House list of organizations participating in the 250th celebration of the founding of this country on an America Prays initiative. Catholics for Catholics is involved, a 3-year-old organization, and the USCCB, which has been around and been a collaborator with the federal government on so many things, is oddly missing. I just find that interesting.
The bishops can't be political, Michael.
Oh, I see. That's what it is. That's what it is.
Like, devil's advocate to defend them. You could say you can make a little bit of a case, maybe that the personnel behind this whole endeavor didn't do a whole comprehensive list and try to like go after organizations potentially. But it should be the purpose now that, because obviously they know about this initiative, that people on the staff of the USCCB say, hey, White House, this is what we do. Can you add our name to this list? Can you put we love what you're doing, right?
Right.
I don't think that's going to happen. What do you think, Michael?
I suspect you're probably right. Now, on the other, what I also will say is that I'm looking forward to looking at the materials that you have for the Catholic approach to this, how we as Catholics will be participating in the America Prays campaign.
Yeah.
I, for one, am a huge proponent of rosary processions, massive rosary processions. Can you imagine? Now, Father John Carney, I'm sure you know who he is, or Lawrence Carney, Father Lawrence Carney. He's a big proponent of the Holy Face devotion.
Okay, right.
And he has just recently launched a Holy Face crusade where he wants to have processions of the Holy Face. Now, could you imagine Catholics for Catholics working with Father Carney, marching with the Holy Face in the front to fight against communism and free thinkers and revolutionaries, with processions of Our Lady and praying the rosary? I can't think of a more prayerful and more efficacious campaign in anticipation of the 250th celebration of this country than that.
If you saw my face go serious, it's because my wheels were turning with ideas. I'm an ideas guy, Michael. So you just gave me an idea. That's a good idea. That's a really good idea. Because prayer outside of our Catholic faith is limited. But prayer with the power of the sacraments and our sacramentals, like the Holy Face, images like that, it brings the house down, right? It makes the walls of Jericho fall down. And we gotta be, so we're already doing that. So like we're at Rosary, of course, we are patriotic rosaries, adoration, we're promoting right off the bat. We're also even simple things like Inform the Mind. We're continuing to promote Christian Patriot by Dr. Taylor Marshall. Okay. 12 ways to make one nation under God. If you make again, we have a superb deal. Tons of people are taking advantage of this. There's only like not that many copies left, but if you give us a $50 donation, we will send you for free a signed copy in the mail. Okay. Awesome deal. Take advantage. Christian Patriot, Taylor Marshall, forward by Harrison Bucker. To get Informed in the Mind, it's one more kind of component of this. But also leading up to It's a perfect way. Our campaign is called Catholic Prayer for America. This will culminate in literally an event called Catholic Prayer for America Gala in Washington, D.C., March 19th. We are about to announce some of our first speakers. So, but mentally flag the date in your mind, March 19th. We announced the date back in June, but now it's like perfect how this is synced up with the White House's initiative for prayer. Work partnering with the White House. It's going to be Catholic prayer in DCC. You got to be there. So, final comments, Michael, as we hit the end of this show.
I don't know how you can top that.
That's it. I mean, it's well, how about we top it with an actual prayer? We just pray for end this and kind of a prayer asked to Our Lady. Here's a cool anecdote. I was there again with Trump 2 days ago in DC, a limited or intimate gathering of people, and I approached. I won't say the guy's name, just out of in case he doesn't want me to share the story. He's one of the top historians of American history in this country. And as I get ready for this, Charles, get ready to show our logo. I introduced myself. Again, he's written tons of books on the role of God in America, patriots. If I say his name, you'll know right away. Anyway, so he, I was sitting next to him, introduced myself. Hey, John, Catholic for Catholics. Great, awesome. What do you guys do? And we're chatting about different acts and stuff that we both do. And I gave him a business card. He looks at our logo. He says, "Oh, cool. That's a cool logo." I said, "Yeah. Do you recognize it?" Mm-hmm. And he said, "Yeah, that picture looks familiar." I'm like, "Exactly." I said, "That's the picture of that George Washington had in Mount Vernon." Okay. Mm-hmm. He's not Catholic. And he's like, "Oh, wow. Yeah, that's right." Yeah. And he had John the Evangelist as well, which are still there in the green room today to this day. And I said, we've made that our logo. Okay. So we've tied our faith right to support in honor of the fourth commandment, support your country of patriotism, honor thy father and mother, and asking for Our Lady's intercession with all this. He was duly impressed. It's because we gotta go to Our Lady. She's the mediatrix of all graces. So all that to say, how about we end with the Hail Mary?
All righty.
Asking for Mary's intercession upon us and upon this whole prayer campaign leading up to the anniversary of this country. Nomini Patris Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Ave Maria, gratia plena, Dominus tecum, benedicta tu mulieribus, et benedictus fructus ventris tui, Jesus.
Sancta Maria, Mater Dei, ora pro nobis peccatoribus, nunc et in hora mortis nostrae. Amen.
Nomini Patris et Filii Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Bring back the Latin. Yeah. This has been an awesome edition of Catholic Champion. This is what we do. We talk about what's going on in the world from a Catholic perspective to get you activated and involved. We need that. Like Pier, Giorgio Frassati, Saint Frassati was involved in political life. He got arrested. He stood up to fascism. We need that as Catholics. Okay. God bless you all. Fight on. See you next week.